Hey, good afternoon. 507 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up today, Ken Cuccinelli will join us this hour, former Virginia Attorney General, former Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security. We'll get his reaction to all of the actual immigration enforcement going on across the country right now under Tom Homan, under President Trump and company. You can join us, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Boy, there's a lot going on. Today, the President of the United States expected to sign an executive order banning so-called transgender troops from serving in the military. These would be people who are living under a delusion that they were born in the wrong body, oftentimes having medical interventions, treatments done either in the form of chemicals or actual surgeries done at taxpayer expense while in the United States military, which, of course, has the effect of taking them out of commission, making it so that they're not able to serve at the time that they're recovering from all of this, and then also making them permanent patients for the rest of their lives to tend to the cosmetic changes that were made to their bodies. And by now, you've heard all of the reasons why this is very bad for a human being, and the American military has been subsidizing it, enabling it. And the Biden administration thought this was a great thing, actually. And it's not great. It's misery-inducing, and it's not good for military readiness. It doesn't enhance the lethality and morale of a military unit in any capacity. So today, there's an expectation that President Trump will sign an executive order prohibiting this. President Trump, of the New York Post reporting today, expected to sign 2 executive orders Monday prohibiting transgender service members and eliminating diversity, equity, and inclusion programs from the military. The Post has learned. I guess this would be on top of the other DEI purging executive order that President Trump signed last week, which, again, is a way to get rid of bigotry in the federal government. No more racial and gender prejudice. What are we doing? That's insane. Trump had signed an order on his first day in office revoking the Biden administration's 2021 directive that allowed trans people to serve openly in the military, but the incoming EOs will go further, the New York Post says. They lay out military standards on pronouns and gender identity and directly prohibit thousands of transgender service members from the military, citing issues with mental and physical readiness. The Department of Defense is directed to make and implement the policy after Trump signs the order. Quote, unit cohesion requires high levels of integrity and stability among service members, a White House document previewing the order on transgender soldiers reads. Now, there's a lot to unpack here, but here's a basic thing. How long has the left been telling us that we need to not allow weapons of war to be in the hands of mentally ill people? Well, a long time. A long time. So why would it be the official policy of the U.S. government to put weapons of war into the hands of mentally ill people? That is not in any way empathetic. That is not in any way looking after the well-being of those people. Instead, it's placing them and everyone around them in a more dangerous situation. It's flat out nuts. And another sign of the left's incoherence. It's just incredible. Incredible. And it's the last thing the military needs, which is yet another distraction. And this idea that, we need to obsess over telling people what pronouns to refer to you by, which I'll remind you is a third-party conversation. If I'm narcissistic enough to walk up to you and say, my pronouns are she, her, there's no circumstance where when you and I are speaking that you will use those pronouns. It's only for third-party conversations. It's only when you're talking about me, when I'm not even in the room. I'm establishing rules for how you speak when I'm not present. It's insane. And it's the last thing the military needs. The absolute last thing the military needs. So President Trump, right to revoke it. Very right to revoke it. CNN is fighting tooth and nail to keep it. They had someone on called Layla Ireland, who is, let me get this right, Corey. This is a biological male. This is a dude presenting as a woman. By the way, you're going to hear the voice and you're going to go, man, he kind of passes. He sounds like a lady. Transgender Army veteran, CNN says, insisting in order for our military to be great, We need people who are convinced that they were born in the wrong body.
I think what it boils down to is the support of great command and leadership. And when you are able to provide a space where we value and we show that value of our members of the team, it allows them to really bring their full selves to the fight.
This is not about a team. This is about narcissistic self-indulgence. This is not about unity of effort and purpose at all.
And by doing away with that, we violate our integrity on a daily basis because we can't bring our full selves to the fight. So if you're not having service members serve in their authenticity and serve and bring their full selves.
Are there other costumes we should let members of the military wear when they go into combat? Should we do a full-blown Comic-Con when they show up on a battlefield? Is that the way we should conduct affairs? Should we have a whole regiment of furries just show up, people dressed dressed as their favorite woodland creature appearing on the battlefield? No.
So that fight, we are not effective as we would like to be.
It's just complete goofiness. Anyway, and CNN nods solemnly as he says that. Yes, that's a good point. No, it's not. It's a terrible point. On this issue, this is from last week, but on this issue of the executive orders affecting so-called transgender people, the President Trump last week signed an executive order saying no more men in women's prisons. Now, this should not be controversial. The whole point of a women's prison is only for women, not for men. So if you're going to lock up women, you only lock up women there. And why? I'm not going to go into a big biological explanation, but why do we segregate men from women in prison? Why do we do that? What's the point of those divisions? Anybody? Yeah, I think you know the answer. So we have sex-segregated spaces in confinement. We separate people in prison. We have separate prisons for men and women, which makes total sense. But here is what the left has done. They have so blurred the lines of what it means to even be a woman that they are now admitting men by leaps and bounds into women's prison. This is not a small thing. In fact, the New York Times this past week, you ready for this? Corey, have you seen this statistic about women's prisons? This is wild. They say, the New York Times says that there are about 1,500 federal prisoners who are considered transgender women. 1,500, okay? That's one number. That's 1,500. Currently, according to the Bureau of Prisons, 1,500 men who are pretending to be women in the prison system. That represents 15% of all women in the prison system. 15% of all women in the federal prison system are men. Did you know that? 15%. It's a cruel scam. It's cruel in every sense. It's cruel to the actual women who are confined in these prisons. It's cruel to the mentally ill people whose delusions you're enabling. It is just insanity that we're doing this. 15% of all women in federal prison aren't actually women. They're men. What is happening? And so today, it's so funny because the left is looking for these ridiculous, they're looking for a toehold. They have no idea what to do right now. They are so thoroughly defeated in the battle of ideas. They have nowhere to go. And so when President Trump says, yeah, we're going to ban this type of abuse from the United States military, it does nothing for unit cohesion. It doesn't help lethality at all. We're going to ban men from women's prison. Among the federal population, 15% of all women are men. This is common sense to almost everybody in your life that you know. Unless for some reason they have some sort of perverse incentive to take the opposite position. Or they're so brainwashed by media sources that lie to them. This is common sense to everybody. Nobody's for this crap. Nobody's for men in women's sports. Nobody's for men in women's prisons. Nobody's for men taking women's positions, being in women's locker rooms, being in women's bathrooms. Nobody's for this crap. Except the radical left. And they have spent years browbeating everyone into submission who would dare raise a single question about this. And of course, it's created a lot of victims in the process. So anyway, that's some more good news on Team Reality, Team Sanity today, as President Trump expected to sign this critical executive order, saying, "Yeah, no more of that. We're not doing that. That's crazy. That's crazy." Speaking of crazy, I mentioned Anna Navarro over at The View. She was upset that President Trump got Colombia squared away in 37 minutes over the weekend, as Colombia was refusing to take back its own nationals from our country. We were trying to send military flights back to Colombia, and the president over there, the socialist president, was like, "What? No, we're not taking them." And Trump's like, hell, you aren't. I'm going to impose incredible tariffs on you. I'm going to banish all of your dignitaries. None of you are going to be able to get visas. I'm shutting down everything, and I'm punishing you until you fix this. And within, again, 37 minutes, the president of Colombia was offering his own presidential jet to come and retrieve his own citizens and bring them back to Colombia. That's awesome. Anna Navarro, angry about that today, tweeting that, the majority of flower imports come from Colombia? Good luck on Valentine's Day. Crazy person. Yes, I'm very worried about the cost of roses on Valentine's Day. By the way, just a fun tip for men, because we could always use them when it comes to flower purchases. Buy flowers on off seasons. The flowers at Valentine's Day, that's rigged to take a lot of money out of your pocket. Your lady is going to love if you give her flowers on a day that is not required flower giving. It's not Valentine's Day. There's no obligation for this. Everything about it is seen as a surprise. It's wonderful, and it's the best deal. It's way cheaper to buy it on the off season. Right? Am I right, Anna? Flowers? Yes. Random flowers? That's the sweet spot. Go do that. Save yourself a lot of money. Anyway, Anna Navarro today complaining that, oh no, rose prices are going to go up. I won't have fresh cut roses all over my house. People are just trying to figure out how to get by in the wake of Biden's economy. Yeah. And, and so her insanity continued today over on her own show. John Fetterman stopped by. John Fetterman of the Senate fame, the one who can't even wear a suit to any event. He just wears hoodies. He's always dressed like a slob. There's all sorts of things that Fetterman does that I'm like, oh, that's kind of fun. Fetterman did that. That's unique. That's interesting. Right? Like, I think there was a vote in the Senate to condemn President Trump's pardons of all the January 6 people. Fetterman was the only Democrat not to join it. He was like, I'm not joining the condemnation. Okay, that's kind of cool. Whatever. That you did that. Can you get dressed like a normal person at some point? But Fetterman went on The View today, and Anna Navarro was angry at him for visiting Mar-a-Lago, meeting with President Trump. And here's how he explained it.
You did get a lot of criticism for it from some people who thought you going to Mar-a-Lago gives cover to Trump by creating the solution that he's amenable to working with Democrats.
You're giving cover to Trump. You're aiding and abetting the orange man. He's so bad by literally talking to him. Now, Fetterman's position, which you'll hear him lay out in a moment, but has been, I represent everyone in Pennsylvania. I don't just represent Democrats.
I was very supportive of when people like Mitt Romney and Rob Portman worked with Joe Biden. So I understand the need for bipartisanship. I didn't love the optics of you going to Mar-a-Lago. He was going to, which is his palace. He was going to be in Washington a week later. But what was your goal, and do you feel ultimately you were successful?
Well, here's what happened. I was being lazy on the couch like Friday night, and my team reached out saying, hey, and I don't know if this is like a trolling or a hoax, but they extended an invitation. What do you think? I'm like, well, I mean, if they're playing it straight, then I think it's pretty reasonable to have a conversation, inviting me to engage, and I visited it. So maybe some people would be critical of that, but for me, engaging the president, I think when you're in this business, I mean, that's part of the job.
That's part of the job. Did they have a big round of applause for that? Did the studio audience go wild? No. They just sat there in stunned silence. Like, you're not allowed to talk to him. Like normally, right? Like, wouldn't they applaud something like that? Like, I believe in talking to everybody. I think all ideas are equal. I think that we should represent all voters. You start saying all those things. Like, normally you would think that the audience would be like, yeah, why can't we all just get along? That's not their reaction. No applause. They sat there in stunned silence. I can't believe he talked to Trump. That's crazy. It's 5:22 now. To the phones we go. Tom is calling in from Montclair right now, line 2. Tom, you're on the Vince Coglianese show.
Hello.
Hey there.
Yes, just wanted to say what you were talking about earlier. Said, yeah, you're right on regarding this men and women's prisons. But where's the push? The women who claim to be men, where's the push for them to go into men's prisons? Is there any? No.
It's almost non-existent. In fact, by the same data, if you look at the federal data here, again, I said 15% of all people who call themselves women who are in women's prisons are actually men. Conversely, among the 144,000 male prisoners that the federal government has in custody right now, there are just 750 women who are pretending to be men in that population. That's less than 0.5% of the prison population among men. In other words, this goes really in only one direction, predominantly, as you point out, where you have all these men pretending to be women, which, by the way, a lot of these guys are actually sex offenders. And then they go into these women's prisons, and then they commit further criminality inside of the detention centers. What? I mean, it is truly as demented as you could possibly imagine, which is why our government's been doing it. That's how they operate. That's how they've been operating. President Trump's trying to change all that. That's what people voted for. Coming up, Ken Cuccinelli talks to us about the effort to purge illegal foreign nationals from our country, especially those very, very violent people. The Biden administration knew about them, let them run wild. Trump's changing it. Ken Cuccinelli reacts next. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Here is Pete Hegseth, Secretary Pete Hegseth of the Defense Department, this morning talking to the press as he arrived at the Pentagon.
If you see what the president said last week in his executive orders, he's hitting the ground running. He's made it very clear. There's an emergency at the southern border. That the protection of the sovereign territory of the United States is the job of the Defense Department, and the cartels are foreign terrorist organizations. As a result, this Pentagon Snap 2 last week, we helped move forward troops, put in more barriers, and also to ensure mass deportations, support of mass deportations in support of the president's objective. That is something the Defense Department absolutely will continue to do.
A whole-of-government approach to getting control back of our country. Joining us now, Ken Cuccinelli, Senior Fellow for Homeland Security and Immigration at the Center for Renewing America, former Virginia Attorney General, former Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, and always a welcome guest on this program. Hey, Ken, great to talk to you again, sir.
Yeah, good to talk to you, Vince.
What do you make of the Trump administration's first week tackling the immigration problem?
Well, it's certainly a substantial step up even from his first term. And I got to tell you, your quote there from Pete Hegseth is night and day from the defense secretaries of the first term, who did everything they could to resist the president's use of the Department of Defense to protect our borders, whether it was excuses or dragging their feet or what have you. And now we have the opposite. The real question I have on that front is, are they going to actually use the troops to keep people out of this country? No more of this, oh, we're there to support the Border Patrol. Bull honky. You're there to stop invasions of this country, just like the Secretary of Defense just said. The Department of Defense should be involved in that. So I'm watching for that. I've seen them move the Marines. I've seen them move other troops to the border. If they use troops to augment the Border Patrol between ports of entry, the president could have absolute control of this border by the end of February.
Mm-hmm. And all of that would be the Democrats keep saying stuff like, "Oh, that's unconstitutional. It's illegal. They can't be involved in law enforcement. That's posse comitatus." What do you say to all of that in your capacity as a lawyer?
Well, Vince, I've seen that too. And you know what I haven't seen is them point to any part of the Constitution that's being violated. So the president has Article 2 authority as the commander-in-chief.
Right.
He's in charge of the military. And the most basic fundamental purpose of the military is to protect the sovereign borders of a nation. So the idea that this is even a law enforcement function,
yes,
and even if it were, the military can do that too.
Yes.
Is ludicrous.
So I mean,
they're just spouting the words,
right? And if a
because
foreign
they don't like
adversary,
his success.
if a foreign adversary attacks us inside of our borders, the military is allowed to respond, aren't they?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
just making sure. Okay, all right. So what?
And they can help with the deportations. There's an awful lot the Department of Defense can do, and obviously they have enormous resources.
Bill Malugin over at the Fox News Channel, in just the last hour or so, has been reporting that suspected cartel gunmen, opened fire at Border Patrol agents in Fronton, Texas. The Border Patrol agents returned fire. Not clear if anyone was hit in the exchange, but this is a very real and live issue, Ken Cuccinelli.
It is a very real and live issue. That is not the first time fire's been exchanged with cartel members across that border. Ask the Texas Department of Public Safety. They've been dealing with that for years. And it just doesn't get reported very much in our country. And the cartels obviously are the most violent, vicious people in the Western Hemisphere, and they control the southern side of that border.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely critical that we reestablish, for our own safety and security, reestablish control of that border, especially between the legal ports of entry. Mm-hmm. That way that the only people coming in are getting vetted by Customs Border Protection.
We've seen a lot of footage from all across the country of violent illegal aliens being picked up by the Trump administration. Tom Homan, of course, leading that effort as they pick up sex offenders, people who've abused children, murderers. They're all being taken into custody right now in a very public way. What do you make of that operation as they gather up? It looks like in the vicinity of about 1,000 people per day.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful? It's finally going the other way. And this is making our country safer over and above immigration issues. But let's not forget that while these are the highest priority, and there's a darn good reason for it because it does make us safer in our communities, that all of the illegals, everybody these people breaking the law additionally live with, need to be deported as well. And, you know, that is a major logistical effort that the administration is still just in the beginnings of ramping up to accomplish.
Yeah. How much will these public arrests of illegal aliens, how much pressure does that place on other foreign nationals who are here illegally to maybe pick up and move of their own accord before they're placed in handcuffs?
Yeah, Vince, that's a great question, because what matters the most in the long term is that people considering coming here, A, believe they won't get in, and B, believe that if they get in, they're going to be removed. And I saw Tom Homan again just a day or two ago in interviews talking about removing them all. And if you ever accept that we're going to remove less than everyone here illegally, then they start to get the sense they can stay.
Right.
And if they know they're going to get picked up, if they know they're going to get arrested, some of them suddenly, some of them will go home rather than stay. I would say that's particularly true, Vince, if the Department of Homeland Security starts cutting down on work permits to only the absolute legally required minimum.
You being a Virginia guy, I'm curious about your thoughts about some of the Northern Virginia school districts, or at least Fairfax County, sending out notifications to parents and principals and teachers that they're working to make sure everyone knows what to do if ICE agents show up at the schools. What do you make of this kind of, these dispatches being put out by these left-wing school districts?
This is just more political virtue signaling. You remember the mayor of Denver, we're going to resist and this and that. And Tom Homan said, bring it on. We'll arrest you. He said, well, I didn't really mean resist, and Pritzker, governor of Illinois, look, these folks are going to talk tough. They're going to continue to politically virtue signal, and it's going to mean nothing. It's going to mean absolutely nothing, because the very first time the first one of them aids or abets somebody avoiding federal law enforcement, they're in violation of the harboring illegal aliens federal statute. That's a felony.
Yes.
And I am sure, much like we have a completely new day in the Department of Defense when Pam Bondi gets there in the Department of Justice, I don't think they'll hire a single U.S. attorney who isn't wildly enthusiastic about pursuing immigration offenders. That was not true in the first Trump administration. We had a lot of just traditional, gee, that's dirty, lowly work, I don't want to do that. Not anymore. And so if you get somebody from a school district or a local government that's standing in the way of actual legitimate federal law enforcement, they're going to get arrested and they're going to get prosecuted. And you know what I'm really confident of, Vince? There aren't going to be two of them. Because as soon as the first one happens, no one else will step out of line again. It'll all be mouthing off, and that's it.
Yes, it'd be like how Donald Trump just handled the Colombian president. 37 minutes for a complete reversal of their policy of not accepting their own foreign nationals back after President Trump threatened them with tariffs and cutting off all their visas and diplomatic visits. He got that done very quickly. You're right. That would send a clear message. One good prosecution of some deranged sanctuary city official, the rest of them will all fall in line.
Yes, they absolutely will. And to your point about Colombia, you know, it's always been allowable to sanction these countries that don't take their deportables out of the United States. And you know what the sanctions have been in the past? And I blame the State Department heavily for this, although the president never made them do anything better. It was things like the children of party officials can't get student visas to the United States. Mm-hmm. Seriously, 1/10 of 1/10 of 1,000% is who we're sanctioning. So instead, Trump comes back with Colombia and says, your whole nation gets hit with tariffs if you don't start taking these people back.
Yes.
We need to see that with India. We need to see it with China. We need to see it with the big countries that aren't taking their people back, because we got a lot more to send them.
That's right. And China in particular, we have tens of thousands of illegal Chinese foreign nationals who've literally come up from South America, crossed through the Darien Gap, came into the United States illegally via our southern border, and China's refusing to take any of them back.
Yes, they are. And, you know, we have something like 300,000 Chinese students here on student visas. It's time to knock that number down to about 3,000 that are taking Western Civ as their major, you know? Yeah. So that's long overdue. I hope this president will do that.
Yeah.
By the way, that also defunds these universities who hate us.
Yeah, we got a lot of that going on, too. Ken Cuccinelli, hey, before I let you go, one last thing, just on a different topic, but you talk about Pam Bondi coming into the Justice Department. We've got breaking news this afternoon that the Justice Department just fired a dozen Justice Department prosecutors who were involved in these lawfare prosecutions of Donald Trump. In other words, they must have been working with Jack Smith. It looks like accountability is arriving very rapidly, Ken Cuccinelli.
Yeah, and accountability is critical. A lot of these folks believe they can just duck their head and outlast any given president. It's absolutely critical that these people be fired, that everybody know they be fired. You know, in DHS, it's the people who are working on censorship and CISA. Yeah. Same at FBI. We've got all kinds of people who need to be fired. And frankly, the ones who are violating people's rights, like censorship, should be prosecuted.
Yes.
You want to keep future bureaucrats from doing it? Let them know that the current administration can't protect them.
Hell yeah. Chill censorship, not speech. Thank you very much. Ken Cuccinelli, I really appreciate your time today, sir.
Always a pleasure, Vince.
All
Good
right.
to be with you.
Good to be with you. All right, let me play some audio for you here. This is from CNN today, which is hilarious. They just reported this afternoon what I was just sharing with Ken Cuccinelli, which is that President Trump has apparently, his Justice Department, has fired 12 prosecutors who were all involved in subverting our justice system to attack Joe Biden's political opponent. Take a listen.
Move to fire, we're told, over a dozen officials who worked on criminal investigations related to President Trump. The acting attorney general sent out a memo earlier notifying them that they are being removed from their positions, saying, quote, "You played a significant role in prosecuting President Trump. The proper functioning of the government critically depends on the trust superior officials place in their subordinates. Given your significant role in prosecuting the president, I do not believe that the leadership of the department can trust you to assist in implementing the president's agenda faithfully." So that has happened just in the past 15, 20 minutes. And then earlier this afternoon, we learned that the Trump administration is also launching what is being described as a, quote, special project to investigate certain charges that were pursued in the larger January 6th investigation. So this isn't related to President Trump. But this is related to January 6th prosecutions where individuals were charged with obstruction of justice. Now, the interim U.S. Attorney, Ed Martin, sent out a memo today saying
they weren't charged with obstruction of justice. That's incorrect. They were charged with obstruction of a congressional proceeding, which was a white-collar criminal statute designed in the wake of the Enron scandal about destroying evidence relevant to Congress's activities. In other words, it was misapplied to Trump supporters, to January 6th defendants, and those charges in the end ended up being dropped because the Supreme Court came along and said, yeah, it was misapplied. So she doesn't even know what she's talking about.
That he wants to review cases where this charge was used. A senior administration official notes the fact that the Supreme Court reviewed this charge being used in the context of January 6th, that it could not be used in this context.
Exactly.
So now all of these cases are being reviewed. The senior administration official called this a huge waste of resources and said this is going to be a fact-finding mission. But of course, there are enormous concerns about the Trump Justice Department going after prosecutors. Of course,
people may be held accountable. We have a lot of concerns. The letter that the acting attorney general sent out today, it's just wonderful. It is just wonderful. Firing these dozen or more prosecutors, as CNN reports it, more than a dozen. Here's the letter. This letter provides official notice you are being removed from your position at the Department of Justice and from the federal service effective immediately. As President Trump declared on his first day back in office, quote, the American people have witnessed the previous administration engage in a systematic campaign against its perceived political opponents, weaponizing the legal force of numerous federal law enforcement agencies against those perceived political opponents in the form of investigations, prosecutions, civil enforcement actions, and other related actions, end quote. Nowhere was that effort more salient than in the unprecedented prosecutions the Department of Justice vigorously pursued against President Trump himself. You played a significant role in prosecuting President Trump. The proper functioning of government critically depends on the trust superior officials place in their subordinates. Given your significant role in prosecuting the president, I do not believe that the leadership of the department can trust you to assist in implementing the president's agenda faithfully. As a result, pursuant to Article 2 of the Constitution and the laws of the United States, your employment with the Department of Justice is hereby terminated, and you are removed from federal services effective immediately. President Trump speaking right now in Doral, Florida, to members of Congress.
Throughout the week, the heroes of ICE have been hunting down and arresting hundreds of illegal alien criminals per day, including those with charges and convictions for rape, child sexual assault, terrorism, and even murder. Many murders and in the crowd, and many of these murderers have committed far more than one murder. This is not going to work out, and we're going to get them the hell out of here. And members of the savage Venezuelan prison gang known as Tren de Agua and MS-13, including 50 violent individuals who were rounded up in Aurora, Colorado, which the Venezuelan gang took over. The governor, who's a radical left governor, was petrified. He didn't know what to do. He said, no, it's not that bad. They've only taken over a couple of apartments.
Just amazing. The guy's been president for, a week and 6 hours. I'll take a lot more of this. It's been great. Speaking of great one, Mark Levin up next here on WMAL.